Hi there and welcome to the Barbara Young channel. Now today's video is actually going to be another video about the needle binding that I've been doing. I've been showing that ancient craft that I really enjoy. It's a slow process, slow going craft, but it's really nice to do that and make a garment from it. But as it is a bit of a almost forgotten craft, I've decided to do, as you may have seen, some videos on how I use this craft, how I'm learning this craft and what I'm doing to try and understand what the craft is. So in this video what I'm going to do is two things. Previously I'd done a row of stitches, as it were. That's how I call it, stitches and a row. But what I want to do this time is to connect that row up, so I effectively make a loop like this, a little loop. And that's one of the ways of using needle binding. If you want to make a pair of fingerless mitts or something, you'd make a loop and you just continue to make that loop until you've got basically a tube that you can then use as fingerless gloves with a little bit of other work in there. But that's a sort of idea that you can work effectively in the round. So when you do that, you do actually have to connect up to your row. You have to close the row and make a loop. So that is one of the things I'll be doing and showing you today that I do. And the other one is connecting two pieces of yarn, because this is a technique, a craft, where you have one length of yarn that you work with, and when you get to the end you have to carry on, so you have to connect another piece of yarn to it so that you can continue. Now I've got two different colour yarns here, just so when I do that sort of connection between the two, it's easier to see. But normally, well, I suppose you could do that if you really want to, have each piece of yarn that you use being an alternating colour or something, add a bit of difference in there. Normally I just use the one colour yarn throughout the whole project, but that is obviously a decision for yourselves if you're doing this particular craft. So what I'll do is I will move the camera and set it so I'm looking down upon the work I'm doing, so we can see what I'm trying to do. So I've got here some yarn, and I see not done anything with it yet. So what I need to do, obviously, first of all, is to create a stitch, create a row, isn't it? That's the very first thing. So I'll do that, get a row going, because I'll need a row before I can start circling round, as it were, and connecting the rows together. So get this into my needle. So I've got the one with the two holes, so pull that through to a certain length, sort myself out here. Too much overlap, so pull that back a bit. So I've got it so that I come about halfway to 2/3 of the way that it's doubled up. That's just because of the needle I'm using. So obviously need to start and get started like I normally would, which is creating that loop around the needle. And then always the tricky bit, pulling this initial part through these first two loops without it distorting and making a mess and going everywhere. Well, that's got it pulled through. Now I need to go through one of the loops, the first loop, twist through, and this is always a bit tricky, the second loop. There it is. I've got the second loop, and then twist and come underneath my loop on my thumb. That's a little bit baggy at the moment. So what I'm do is I'm just going to pull this and just tighten that up on my thumb before I put these through. So I've got my tail that I started with, the yarn that's on the needle, and my loops. So take that through. And there we go. Now I have 2 loops on my thumb, which is what I want. I've got 2 loops at the back. What I'm going to do is just pull the tail and tighten up that first loop so it's out the way. That holds everything nice and neat. Just going to pull that one a bit just to tighten these 2 up. Everything's nice and neat, and now I've got my first back loop so I can start a row. So pick up the top loop, and then the way I do it is I go round and through the back of that loop. That's just my personal preference. You can go through the front of the loop, flip a loop off, twist and underneath, and take that through. And there we go. First loop made, first, as it were, stitch of the row. So I just got to carry on doing that until I've got quite a number of stitches in the row. So that's what I'll do, just create a row. Okay, now I've got a few stitches on there. They're looking a bit baggy, so I'm just going to pull this. I'll put my needle through the last loop that I want to keep, that I'll be using, so I don't lose it, even though you can't really lose it. And I'm just going to pull these and just do that, just to give it a bit of tension, because I just need it to neaten up. And it's not too bad, it seems to have gone all right. So continue, so up through my top loop, through the back loop, twist and underneath, and just continue like that for a while. Okay, so I've got so far along with this, and as you can see, I'm getting quite close to the end of this piece of yarn. So I'll need to add to it. So what I'm going to do is I always use these stitch holders, aren't they, for knitting, but I found them quite useful to put them through the 2 loops I've got on my thumb and the back loop, which is the next loop I'll want to be using, just to keep them all together, because I need to slip this off my thumb now so I can do this adding to the yarn. Let me just pull that out a bit just to tension it up. As you see, you've got quite a nice little row appeared now, haven't we? And it's quite nice. And that actually technically would be the inside, and that the outside, because the way this is done. But I suppose it doesn't have to be that way. But you know what I mean? See, look, see how that stitches on there. Looks nice, doesn't it? So Now I need to add some thread, some yarn to this end. So first of all, let's get some water. So I have my 2 ends of yarn. Now, as I said just in the intro, I would normally use the same colour yarn, but for demonstration purposes I've got a different colour yarn, just so we can see how it goes together. What we effectively have to do, because this is a, as I call it, a single ply yarn, and it's not that tightly twisted. You can get some single plies that are really quite tightly twisted, and they're not so helpful because it takes a bit more work to I don't know, felt them together, which is effectively what we'll be doing, splice them together how we want it to be. So what I've got to do is I've got to put these 2 together. I could just do that, put them together and rub them between my hands and see what happens. But actually I need to sort of just prep them a little bit, and I prefer to do that, a little bit of prep work, just to be sure that they're actually going to stay together, I suppose, once I've actually connected them. So I've got a, you know, darning needle. I always find that's quite helpful. And what I do is I just, as it were, call it rough the edges up, you know, just to loosen it up a bit. And I do that on both ends that I'm connecting. Just find it makes it a little bit better, a little bit easier to get them to sort of come together. So yeah, and on this one it might seem a little bit fiddly, but I'd rather make sure I get a good join. And once you get used to doing this, it doesn't take that long really, you know. There we go, that's opened out a bit, so's that one, you know, it's a bit, they're a bit looser. So what I need to do now is actually have a little bit of water, because water really helps it to work. So what I do is I get some water on my fingers. I can put it on in the palm of my hand as well, so my fingers, and that's all a bit damp. Doesn't have to be totally soaking, but you know, enough. And then I can take these 2 and I can put them together like that, and then just place them in the palm of my hand and try and sort of like start to roll them together. And that dampness, the moisture, helps it to sort of come together. And most of that moisture is gone from my hand now because I've been doing that. So the process really is you're just felting these 2 together. Now the thing with this is, once you've done that, if you pull that and you give it a hard enough tug, that will come apart again. This is really just while we're sort of working the yarn to get round to actually getting through. But once you've actually created your stitches with this and that dries off, actually that stays together perfectly fine. You can take a bit more time, you can open it out more and really work the ends together so they're a bit more felted together than what I've done. Depends how much effort you want to put into it, but to me that's good enough. You know, there's a bit of moisture there, that's helped it. So now what I've got to do is I've now got to go to the end of this length, because this is going to be my new length I'm going to be working with, and put my needle on there. So get that in there, and just try and get that through. There we go, and then I just draw it through for a certain amount of distance, so I've got a double length of yarn, not all the way. There we go, so I've got a single length, and there's my join. So now I can put this back on my thumb and continue doing my needle binding. So with this ready to go. I've picked up my 2 loops that are on my thumb again, and there's my back loop ready to go. So as previously, I just continue to make the row and make that row longer. And of course, this is one of the problems you do get. It can get a bit tangled, so there's always a bit of a technique. I use these 2 fingers to sort of pinch them a bit, so it helps you to get less of that sort of, I don't know, it gets twisted up, and then when it gets twisted up, sometimes it can create a little loop that will then knot itself in the length. I really don't want that, because it's just pain in the backside, not needed. So I tend to do that. So like I say, I'll just continue to make my row. And as you see, as long as I'm not really rough with this, as I get to the point where the join is, that join just slips on through, come through as normal, as I have been doing previously all along without any problems, and just then continue making the row. Now, as you can see, I've worked past that join part, and it's fine. It's all okay. But now I have this long length of a row, and I'm like, well, what am I going to do with this? Well, at some point, I want to connect back onto this row to make a loop. And this is where it always got tricky for me when I was doing it before. When I've got this piece out here, I have to think of it the correct way round. My thumb is up, and this part of the row is effectively the inside, and I do have to get it right, because if I turn it up that way, that is the outside, which also means that this here is the top of the row, and this here is the bottom of the row. And that's how I think of it when I do this, because I need to bring this loop round, and I need to start stitching, adding stitches to the top of the row, this top here. So the top at the other end here is this side. This is the top of the row. So I need to bring it round, and the top of the row needs to meet the bottom of the row. Then I've got to find the last stitch, or as near to it as I can. Now, the other thing about this yarn that I'm using is this is the yarn that I actually use. Unlike, let me grab a piece. Unlike this stuff, which is the nylon, acrylic, or whatever standard knitting yarn is that you buy, and it's like I think it's a DK or 4-ply. This is so you can see how different that looks from each other. This is the type of yarn that I use to make these. You can see it's harder to see where some of the stitches are. You have to look a bit closer, more carefully. You can already see that the yarn itself is already forming a slightly more, I suppose, uniform and flat. You know, that's when it mats together, which is what you want it to do. You want it to create a sort of felted effect and join together, so it makes a more even and more consistent piece of fabric basically, without any gaps and holes in it. Unlike this, you can see the sort of gaps and holes in it, whereas with this yarn you won't have that. You know, it sort of, as it's worn and used, it slowly disappears. But it does mean I've got to look more carefully to find the last loop. So I'm here and you can see these loops here on the yarn. So that one there is technically my last loop on the top of the yarn. So I need to connect to that point. So that's exactly what I'm doing. I take my needle, I'm going to put it through that hole there. Then I've got what's on my thumb. Like I did before, I'm now going to pick up the top loop, go round through the back of that loop, slip it off, twist underneath, and this is the tricky bit. I now need to make sure that this sits correctly in the right place for when I draw this yarn through. There we go. Now I've put one loop through this, through the first loop at the beginning of that row. So I've effectively now connected the row up. Now the next point is to continue connecting the rows from the top of this row to this new loop. But the thing I want to do is make a really good connection. Now what I could do is I could pick up the next loop and just stitch one loop into this one here and continue that. But I want it to be a better connection than that. So what I'm doing is I'm picking up a new loop, which is my next stitch that I'm creating, and I'm also picking up the last loop that I went through. You can see there, I've already been through that loop. It's the first loop I picked up. So I'm going to pick up a second loop, the next one, and the previous loop. Then I'm going to go through the loop on my thumb, through the back loop, slip it off my thumb, twist, and pull that through. As you can see, this is wanting to sort of knot itself up, which is always what I find when I start connecting to the next row. It sort of wants to knot itself up a little bit. It takes a little bit of care to make sure that doesn't happen until I get going around the loop, around the row. So again, get my back loop ready, and the reason I get my back loop ready is because I'm coming through the back of it rather than going through the front, which is just how I prefer to do it. Now again, I've now got to look at this here, and I've got to pick up my next loop, then come through the previous loop. But as you can see, if I look at this carefully, I've got one loop, two loops. There's two there. I only want to pick up one of them, and that's the previous one that I've just done. So that's my next loop I'm picking up, and then I'm picking up that one there, which is the one behind it that I've already created a stitch through. Then I'm going through the one on my thumb, through the one up the back, flip that off, twist, and underneath. And I am now slowly connecting to the top of this row. So I'm now creating a loop. So next one, like I say, it's always a bit tricky because you've got to define, because when I'm working with, like I say, when I'm working with stuff like this, which is not what I'd normally use, you can sort of see where where each loop is. But with this, because it's only a single ply that's not that tightly wound or turned, it's a bit harder to see what you're doing. So it does take a little bit more work to work out and to make sure I'm picking up the right point, the right part. And then it's just continue in that way. Find the next loop, find the previous loop, through the loop on the thumb, through the back loop, twist, flip that one off, twist it and back through. And that is basically me connecting to the next loop and creating those rows that are going round and round and round. So I'll just continue like this for a while and until I've got a few more on there. You can see how that looks then. So there we go, I'm actually getting on quite a bit with this, aren't I? I'll just do one more, which is pick up a new loop, pick up the last loop that I'd already stitched through the loop, top loop on my thumb, and for me, through the back of the loop on the back of my thumb, flip that thumb loop off, twist and push on through. There we go. Now, again, this looks a bit loose, so again, just that thing of pulling it just to give those loops the tension they should have. And what I'll do is I'll just again take my stitch holder and hold those stitches, which is the two thumb loops and the one at the back, and we'll have a look at this. So there we go. See, our yarn join is over there, see? So, and then I come round and we get a new loop. So as you can see, that's looped onto there and created a new row, and that good contrast, isn't it? Yeah, there we go. So that's connecting to the row below to make a round in the round. Yeah, that's simple, or so it seems. So there you go. That's me making a loop, basically, and that's just, as far as I'm aware, just one of the basic techniques of doing the needle binding. Because you can see how that works, can't you? That if you've got a loop, you can make small things like a mitt, fingerless mitt, or something like that, maybe even a glove. I'm not quite sure the technique of being able to make a glove with fingers in it, but you can certainly make a fingerless mitt, and you just keep going round and round and round, and then a little bit of something for where the thumb comes through. But other than that, you know, you have a loop. Also, you can use this technique for socks as well, because imagine it's just a loop, and the only difference being, as I imagine, is that you'd make a loop, a tube, so you've got a tube that's so long, and then at some point you'd leave it so you're only anchored on at one point, and then you continue the tube, and then you can basically bend that tube, can't you, so it's at an angle instead of it being completely straight where you've left it, so it's only connected on one side, and then you can work in a heel. Don't ask me how that's done. I don't know. I've never made one. Never made a pair of socks using this technique, but I'm sure that, saying it to me, sounds like the sensible way to do it. So basically creating a tube. You could also use these for sort of, I suppose, neck warmers. They'd be quite loose because, you know, there's only so much stretch. There is some give in this. you can see there's a certain amount of give in this, which is great, but only a certain amount. It only goes so far. And again, looking at the actual loop that we're round here, that was the single part of it. That's one row. And then as we've come round, what we've done is we started here. That's the first row. And we've gone round and we've created that first row. It's come round, and then we've changed the yarn colour so I could show you about how to attach on another piece of yarn, and then we've continued that row in this darker yarn and then connected it to the previous row there, and that's what we end up with. That's how it looks, you know, as you continue round. But obviously the other thing about this is working out how round you want that to be, because obviously for anybody that would be quite a loose fit on any person pretty much. And the other thing with this is that you could say, oh well, you need to do so many stitches before you connect onto the next row, and that's one size. But because you're using your thumb as a gauge, everybody's stitch is going to be different, so every row will be different. So it comes down to personal preference and how you want it. So it's literally one of those techniques where you make a row and then you'd work out, you go, okay, put that round the wrist of the person you're making it for and go, that's about right. So each item that you make is unique and individual. There's no two going to be the same, because you're always going to do it slightly different. If you were making a pair of fingerless mitts, for example, from one person to the next, even from left to right, you might have a slight variation in the amount of stitches you do for the row and how you, when you work around to create the next row. So yeah, they are very, very unique and individual items of clothing, of garments that you can make. Now, the yarn that I've been using today, which is the yarn that I mainly use, because I find it difficult to get hold of the yarn that I really want to be able to use. This is the Rico Design Essentials Organic Wool, and it's an Aran weight. It's 50 gram ball, and you get about 85 meters of this. It's 100% wool, and it's made in Italy. So yeah, Rico Designs, that stuff. And it's a really nice wool. It's really quite soft. It's not a harsh or itchy wool, because some wools can be a bit harsh on the skin, but this feels really quite nice. I'd like to find other wools and other places to get wool from, because I say only having one particular brand isn't so good, especially if I find that that was suddenly unavailable. I wouldn't know where to get other yarn from, because it does need to be, as I said, it does need to be this single, like a single ply, and not overly heavily twisted. If it's twisted too much and it becomes too tight, it makes it hard to splice those two ends together to connect the two bits of yarn together when you want to obviously continue on. So yeah, so that's what I've been showing you today, and that's how I do it. That's my way of doing it. I know there are different ways of doing it, there's different techniques, and there's lots of different ways of connecting one row to another. You can use one loop, two loops, three loops. You can loop through forwards and backwards, and there's all sorts of variations. And as I said, really, needlebinding is a variation on a theme. You've got one basic sort of way of doing it, and then everything else just is a variation on that technique. That's the way that I like to do it. That's my technique, as it were. If that actually is a technique that is shown anywhere else, or is actually within, I suppose, the archaeological records, they found evidence of that particular process of stitching the loops together and creating those stitches that way, then that's brilliant. But as far as I know, that's just the way that I particularly like to do it. So yeah, there we go. That's my little video on needle binding. On this occasion, it's about connecting yarn lengths together and connecting the rows together to create those loops to continue working effectively in the round. So there you go. It's my way of doing the needle binding. If you like this video, please do give me a thumbs up. Subscribe if you'd like to. If you click that little bell icon, you get notifications when my videos come out. Please do comment. I do love reading your comments. It's always nice to hear what you're doing, what your thoughts are on this. And if you wish to talk about other stuff, please do, and comment between yourselves. And that's why we come together, isn't it? To make those connections. So I think it's just left me to say thank you very much for watching my video. I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Bye.